Thank you for listening to this worship podcast of St. Andrew Lutheran Church. We hope this recording provides you with a moment of God's grace wherever this finds you. Know that you're welcome to join us in person for worship in Eden Prairie on Sunday mornings at 9 or 10:30. And also know that any contribution you make will bolster St. Andrew's ministry and outreach, including our podcasting directly to you. You can do so online. Welcome and God's blessings to you.
The Holy Gospel this morning is from St. Luke, the 24th chapter. But on the first day of the week at early dawn, they came to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb. But when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly two men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you, while he was still in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and on the third day rise again." Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them, who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen clothes by themselves. Then he went home, amazed at what had happened. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Every story needs its beginning. Every story needs to place us in a certain way, in a certain context, in a certain neediness that is part of life and part of faith. We started our service here this day with the sanctuary a little bit dark times, darkness in the land, the darkness of the morning. We think about the reading that Pastor Matthew just read as well, that everything in the story started at pre-dawn darkness, with fear, with perplexity, with disappointment. How could bad things happen to good people like Jesus, who had done so much? Might makes right. Whatever happened to mercy and compassion, they thought that he would be the one who would make all things right. And we enter into the story as well on a day like this in 2026 and may wonder also, where in the world is love? Is it alive? Is it here? Is it part of our story? We need to start from the beginning of these circumstances. Remember back to 1968. 58 years ago here, there was a couple of things happening in that year and in that decade. Maybe you lived it, maybe you've studied it. We know that there was civil discourse and discord in our country. There was a war happening overseas. There were circumstances in our country that were so hard that decade and that year. There was also 3 astronauts who were making their way to the moon, a flyby. As Apollo 8 made its way behind the moon and emerged out from behind, and they set their eyes upon the globe, upon the world in which we live, we remember perhaps the words that were said, some words of hope, some words of promise to the people of Earth. Let's listen to them one more time.
Now approaching lunar sunrise. And for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light.
And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. The Spirit moved over the chaos and said, "May there be light and love, and let us start this world onto a journey toward mercy and peace." Thanks be to God. Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. When we come to this place in our world today, we so desire to see glimmers of love in our world. We so desire to get caught up in the movement again and to share in it. And we see it in a variety of places. I am grateful to be part of a family and to be part of a group of a younger generation that I live with, like my boys, who keep me up to date with what's going on in the world, because I can learn about things that are happening and why people are so intrigued to be caught up in the merging of love in the world. For instance, a couple of months ago, I mentioned here at St. Andrew the story of Punch the monkey. Maybe you've seen him on Instagram in your various feeds. This monkey who was abandoned at birth at a zoo south of Tokyo and was being bullied by the other monkeys in his tribe. This was the story that was being viewed by millions and millions of people worldwide. Punch, a young baby monkey isolated. Then we have found out now, as time has gone by, that Punch is part of the whole community again. Why do we get so caught up in these stories? Why do we need these things to become part of who we are? Why do we follow them? We want them desperately. The other thing, too, that I appreciate from a couple of weeks ago, again, my boys called and said, "Dad, we have to go and see this movie, Project Hail Mary. Have you seen Project Hail Mary yet?" No spoiler alert here. If you've seen the trailer, he's also an astronaut heading out to the distant universe to save the world. You know how all those movies go. But when you leave the sanctuary, when you leave the movie theater, when you go and watch it, and I recommend it to you, you will leave lighter. You will leave with a sense of peace. You will leave with a joy from the humor and from the storyline and from these beautiful characters, because as the people have written about it in various media, they say the reason why this movie is so popular is because people need to feel good about themselves, their neighbors, and the world in which they live. So Project Hail Mary, see you over at the AMC here this afternoon. It's also something that we hear around St. Andrew Lutheran Church as well. Honestly, this place is a place that isn't like an Instagram feed from Japan with Punch the Monkey or a 2-hour movie that's an escape, but a community that invests itself in making sure that people belong, that they matter, and they experience care and compassion. We hear this time and time again, not just in the way things are in 2026, but as we look back to the 50 years of ministry that we have had in our 50th anniversary year, and as we move ahead into the next 50 years, our hope and our prayer is that in the midst of all that's going on in life, we can get a sense of what it means to be grounded in what God wants us to know, that love is alive. For us as a community and for the world out there that needs us to be just that community out there in the world. So the question that I want you to be dwelling in here this Easter Sunday, as you've heard in the children's message and in my messages, is love alive? Love is alive. We feel it in, with, and through us. And we also, how does it go, Pastor Matthew? Come on up here. No, and it welcomes all. I'm learning this. This is only the second service, so I've got a couple more to go. Here. But love is alive. We wonder, is it all alive? Love is alive with the period is a little bit more of a mundane, normal sentence. Love is alive. It's a pondering and a wondering. But Easter Sunday is a day when we hear this word that love is alive. Jesus was not there anymore in the tomb. The disciples, the followers of Jesus, in their despair, thought it was all over. But Jesus was raised, no longer present in the tomb, no longer wanting the disciples to live in that moment of limbo and wonder and concern. But love is alive, exclamation point, is the final word. That death no longer has the final word. And so what we understand in our Christian faith and life is that, if I may do a little bit more grammar with you as an English teacher here, that God puts not a period at the end of sentences, but God always places a comma. They saw Jesus die on the cross, but God wasn't done yet. They went to the tomb with burial spices because it was all over, and they heard the words, "Why are you looking for the living among the dead?" My favorite line of the Easter passage. In other words, we seem to decide when our story is over. We keep closing the book, but God keeps writing new chapters. In the game that we play in life, the buzzer sounds, and God says, "No. Let's keep playing. Let's keep going." We say, "That's it." And God says, "What next?" It is too good to be true, but God says, "I love you to the moon and back," as that little children's book that I read so many times to the boys rings true. And in fact, as one of the astronauts on Artemis 2 stated just this morning, as they too rounded the backside of the moon and came toward the planet Earth as well, these words that you'll have to learn about more, and I will learn more about them more when I get home here as well. But when we look at how special we are, said the astronaut, in the void of space. That is the message of God's love in Easter, how special we are in this great void and emptiness. So love, my friends, is on the loose. It is alive. It is real. One of the stories that we love in our family is a story from my wife's side, from Michelle's side of the family, and when she was growing up as a little girl. She, with her brother and sister and mom and dad, on the streets of Edina that are paved in gold, and all the lawns are green and lovely, trimmed with scissors and so forth. Now, I live in Edina, so I can say those kinds of things. Many years ago, Michelle got a hand on a bag of sunflower seeds, not the ones that you eat at a baseball game, but the ones that you plant in a garden. She took those seeds and she ripped them open. And she said to me this week, she said, "I was in a planting phase of my life." So however old she was, 4, 5, 6 years old, out playing, but also out planting. So a couple in this flower box, a couple in this flower bed, a couple along the street corner, a couple by the back shed. So what happens when a seed is planted? They grow. And so suddenly, this beautiful Edina neighborhood had sunflowers growing all over it. And this great conversation that Wayne, my father-in-law, and Mary, my mother-in-law, had when they knew what was going on. They had no idea until the sunflowers started showing up. The words were from Wayne, who we remember 13 years ago, his passing, just 13 years ago, and still sits very much. He said, "We can't cut them down. Michelle planted all of them." we don't cut them down. Sunflowers were a reminder for us here today. And there's three very simple ones on the altar here this morning, that love in the grace of God is planted in the ground and it emerges. It surprises, it delights, and it's a way in which we, as faithful people of God, I think, are capable of saying the words to each other, not just one day, but every day. But happy Easter, number one. But also love is alive, number two. But also, number three, that Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed. Christ is risen. Is risen indeed. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Alleluia. May the light and the love and the grace of God inspire us in new ways as the love that God so desires for the world makes itself known. And all of God's people said, Amen. Thank you for listening to this worship podcast of St. Andrew Lutheran Church. We hope that this recording provides you with a moment of God's grace wherever this finds you. Any contribution you make to St. Andrew will bolster our ministry and outreach, including our podcasting directly to you. You can do so online. Thank you for joining us for this podcast, and I wish you every blessing from Christ today.